Hi, Melinda. It's fantastic to have you live here today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm at home. And for those of you who know, I was with you 2 years ago in Cambridge, and it was such a great experience being with you throughout the whole session. So I am definitely missing that. Although from a jet lag perspective, I'm very happy to have been in my own bed last night.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're now moving to this live Q&A with the leaders of tomorrow, and they are starting to populate the Slido with some questions for you. I will kick off first with, how well do you think innovations like JLABS serve all global communities? Is there a way that we can integrate all geographies and reach traditionally underserved areas? Is this already been doing to some extent, and how can this really be done?
So such a great question. Particularly during COVID-19, where we're seeing such disparities in terms of certain communities and their underlying conditions, which have made them particularly vulnerable to COVID-19. I think we've all had to take a step back and say, are we doing enough? Are we doing all the right things? And that starts first with leadership. So we have to look at our leadership and say, do we have leadership that reflects all of our populations? Because when you have leaders from all these different populations, that's when their voices are brought to the table. That's when we understand what the priorities are, what the gaps are, and how do we deliver solutions to the people who need them in the way that makes the most sense for them. So one thing that we're doing today is we're looking at our leadership teams and saying, are they diverse enough? And I certainly have a lot of diversity on my team. But when you look at very specific categories of diversities, there was gaps that I had. I needed more leaders that reflected communities of color, like Black and Latinx, and you know, we have a fairly diverse set of JLABS around the world, but there's still many gaps that are missing in terms of where we could be and serve better. The quickfire challenges were a way of trying to resolve that. So to put out challenges to the global community and to have them populate those challenges with potential solutions that could meet those populations. And at the same time, we realized we had to be very explicit about it. So we did recently a quickfire challenge for diversity, looking for Black innovators to come up with new solutions for those communities, and certainly just supporting Black innovators. And then we're also about to launch a healthcare disparities quickfire challenge to have better solutions to reach communities that don't have the best care or access to care or coverage for care. And we're also just launched a Black innovator for skin health quickfire challenge. So we're trying to figure out, where are those explicit gaps and how do we fill them? And so sometimes we can say, I've checked the box of diversity. You know, some women on my team, or I'm supporting women-led organizations, and that's not enough. I think we have to go very granular about where the biggest gaps are, and then we have to go in deep and serve those gaps. And that's where we're going to have some really meaningful impact.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. And it's so interesting if you to pick up on that, because our leaders of tomorrow have actually come from a session about diversity inclusion, only just. So that wasn't planned at all, guys. So obviously it's such a massive issue, and it's fantastic to hear the work that J&J are doing around that. So my next question is, what are the advantages, differences between JLABS and other incubator companies, such as Alexandria Launch Labs and Lab Central?
Yeah, they're all very complementary. Listen, at the end of the day, to be an entrepreneur, an innovator in life sciences is very hard. This industry has a lot of regulations to it, a lot of policy to it, a lot of ethics around it. And it's very expensive, as I just talked about. It's very risky. And so the more support that is out there, the better. So we're very complimentary to all those initiatives. I applaud them all because we're all on that same mission together, which is to enhance and save lives. And really, I mean, what a difference in 20 years. When I first started in this industry, there was nothing for life science entrepreneurs, absolutely nothing. And when you compare to all of the different solutions that are out there today, it's amazing. And yet, to the previous conversation that we just had, we still have some pretty major gaps. And so now what I'd like to see is all those fragmented solutions put their lens upon what gaps are still remaining. And those gaps are ripe business opportunities for all of you to think about. How are you going to serve those gaps? Can you step into something that you feel really passionate about? It's not being served today. And if you walk through walls to make that happen, how much of an impact can you make for some people who are deeply in need, whether it's healthcare solutions or whether it's a bunch of people who just feel alone. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's looking for those gaps. There's still gaps out there, still opportunities for you to make a difference.
Fantastic. So our next question is, how important is it that biotech brings in ideas from other specialty areas? I think you've touched on that slightly there, but how can we make sure individuals feel equally empowered to take the leap?
Well, listen, when I first got into the industry, coming from the tech industry, I gotta tell you, people said things to me like, what are you doing here? Everybody in this industry has a PhD. Even the janitors at Genentech have a PhD. I actually heard that. And yet, what I brought to the table was something that was very unique. I could look at the industry from a completely different perspective and see gaps where no one else had seen them before. So whatever you're working on, it doesn't matter. Whatever industry you come from, it doesn't matter. If you're interested in this industry, you will bring a very unique perspective to the table. So I don't think anybody should exclude themselves. This is very much an opportunity to have transformational leaps because you have a different perspective. And there's so many business opportunities here. It's not just about curing cancer. There can be new telemedicine options, new ways of delivering solutions to people that will make their health better, get them better access to medicines, find out new ways to cover those medicines, new insurance solutions. I think this industry is so ripe to blow up in so many ways that will make it better for us. So look at analogs. I highly encourage you to look at analogs. I do that to my team all the time. I said, look at other industries, look at different solutions that are out there that are completely different from us. But then say, if you apply that same lens to this, what could we do that could really shake it up and make it so much better? We have such a long ways to go to have better access and more affordable care for people.
Absolutely, all about breaking down those silos and learning from each other.
That's right.
So the next question is a little bit more about your perspective on accelerator type programs. So is the future of innovation solely located within these accelerator type programs? Is there anything that they might miss? How can academic institutions ensure there is synergy with institutions like JLABS?
So I think it's, like I said before, I think there's always gaps and opportunities to address things that aren't meeting a need. So I would start first with, what is the need that you're looking for? You don't want to create an accelerator program for the sake of creating an accelerator program. You want to say, what is the patient or the customer need or gap that we haven't solved for yet? And what's the best way to approach that? And why is this approach different? So instead of a Me Too, and sometimes Me Too work, right? So let's say you take a Me Too model in a developing country. Well, that's a great model to look at. But if you're going into in a developed market for that particular solution, what is different about it than everything else? So you have to think about that matrix. And so for academic institutions that have accelerator programs, we love that. We want to be the customer of that. We want to say, once you get to a certain point, are you ready for JLABS? Or some of the folks in JLABS that would go into accelerator program could do both at the same time. Let's say you need some infrastructure where you have a need to have more protection of your own IP, but you still want to engage with the academic institution and the accelerator. That's all possible. So really, it's not thinking about what you can't do, it's thinking about what you can do and how to position that so that in that model everybody wins.
Absolutely. So another question that's come in that's a little bit more about the JLAB facilities and setup. So how have you walked the line between encouraging collaboration and protecting the IP of the companies that are within the JLABs?
Yeah, and it's such a great question. When I first got into the industry and proposed this approach, I've heard a lot of people having concern about IP. Because IP is so important in this industry. You know, in the tech industry, it's really much more about speed and execution. In the life science industry, it is largely about IP. And what we found is, funnily enough, in all these years of doing JLABS, we've never had an issue around IP, not once. And indeed, what we have is people really sharing ideas and thoughts and skills. So we'll have one company who's got a data component to what they're doing, and instead of spending months trying to find the right consultant and then having to put down an expensive retainer and leveraging them part-time, and for somebody who doesn't really know them, they can walk across the hallway to someone who's sole business is in data science, get them to pop over for 15 minutes, give some of their expertise and wisdom, and they're continuing off to the races really quick like that. And that's what you find in all of our JLABs. Everybody keeps their doors open and they mingle in and around each other, and everybody is focused on what is the bigger mission. What is that's bigger than ourselves, and what are we all working for? And we're here to help each other because the road is hard. And only unless we help each other and we think about bringing this community along together, will we be successful. So really, at the end of the day, we've never had an issue around that at all.
Great. So the next question actually relates to that hard journey. So you've been doing this for some time, launched multiple sites. From your own perspective, what are the biggest hurdles that researchers face when launching their bioentrepreneurial journeys?
I think it's really it's about taking a step off the cliff and the risk associated with that, wondering if you'll be able to fly. And that's a tough decision. I think once you make that decision, you got to be all in, and then you can't doubt yourself, you can't think about the what ifs, you just got to do whatever it takes to make it happen. But taking that first step off the cliff, that's a tough one. And that's one that many struggle with, and many people who might otherwise contribute in a immensely impactful way pull back, because it's not the safe choice, and that's okay. There's many different ways we can contribute, but I think there's a certain faith you have to have in yourself. There is a need for you to feel comfortable with being vulnerable and to ask for help. To reach out to a community of people who will help you be successful, and know at the end of the day that you've framed out the need, the impact that you're going to have, and that will carry you through. Listen, I can tell you, there's examples that I've had in my life where I was presented with opportunities that seemed, so big. And I was probably a bit more comfortable where I was, even though I was still risk taking. And when I look back on it now, they say we should never have regrets. I think, we can have learnings, and there's something I wish I might have done. And listen, we all work out our lives in the way that it was meant to be that way. But I think it is important to say there are certain points in time where you're going to be at the edge of the cliff, and because of the impact you can have, you should just say yes. Yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll be open. Yes, I'm going to be vulnerable. And yes, I'm going to ask for help. And I have a very good chance of making it. And how will I feel later if I had said no? Do I want to have regrets about this? So I think it's a tough call. It's an important call. It's not an easy call, but it could have huge impact.
Great. So I have one last question for you, and then I'll ask for a couple of final words for the leaders of tomorrow. So my last question is, what type of roles, or how can graduates, PhD level, with a biotech or biomedicine background get involved with JLABS? Are there career opportunities? How do they go about it?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of career opportunities, not just across JLABS, but across J&J. Opportunities for you to get involved in key projects that will have a meaningful impact. I mean, obviously, we're doing a lot of work on our vaccine for COVID-19. There's certainly opportunities there. There's opportunities in our medical device division, robotic surgery, which is really exciting, and consumer health for like skin health or self-care, or indeed across our Janssen business, whether you're looking at oncology or immunology, infectious disease vaccines, like with the vaccine, so many opportunities to play with us where you can have a meaningful impact. So please look on our career webpage. And if you're an entrepreneur, check out our quickfire challenges. There may be something there that you can contribute to, an idea that you have. And they don't have to be companies, they could be ideas. So look for all that. We're here to help the best talent have that impact for patients and consumers.
Great. So a wealth of opportunities, most definitely. Over to you, Melinda, for any final thoughts or closing ideas that our leaders of tomorrow can take away today from this?
Well, listen, we're in a unique moment in time, as you can see, where normally we would be together, but because of what's going on in the world, we're making it work, and kudos to the group here who's pivoted to make this happen. And I would say that this is a moment for a lot of reckoning. This is a moment to see if there's something in here that we've seen that hasn't gone quite right, that we weren't prepared for. Does that illustrate a gap that you could step in and fill? Is there a purpose that you may find the meaning of all of this in, that could contribute to helping us avoid the downside of everything that's happening today? And thinking about all the suffering that's out there, is there a way that you can alleviate that suffering? Can you be a part of that solution? And listen, at the end of the day, many different organizations like J&J working on its COVID-19 vaccine, everybody's pulling together to see what they can do to help. And I think it's really important to remember that organizations are not empty vessels that do all this work. Organizations are people. People want to be inspired and motivated and do everything that they can to make this work. So there are a lot of leadership lessons here in organizations that are doing it really well and organizations that aren't. In both of those scenarios, you can learn what makes a great leader, what makes a great strategy, what has a bottom line impact for people all over the world. So take this moment, seize this moment. I know you must be frustrated. It would be great for us all to be together, but there are so many great learnings here that you can turn into gold, that you can turn into health for many people around the world. So seize the moment. This is for you. You are uniquely positioned at this moment in time to learn from this opportunity, to learn from this crisis, to have an impact over the journey of your career. And listen, you got a lot of years to give back. You got a lot of years to make an impact. And listen, you don't have to get it right all at once. You just have to start little bit by little bit, one question, answer that question. What's the next question? What's the next question? And soon you might grow a global organization like I did.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Some really inspiring words for our leaders of tomorrow. Thank you for joining us today.